0600 local time, a Ukrainian operator watched two FP-2 strike drones lift off into the mist and settle to 50 feet above the marsh towards a bridge 95 kilometers south of him, deep inside occupied territory. What he didn't know was that the Russians had already figured out the one patch of marsh this strike had to cross, and they were waiting. 40 kilometers south, a Russian fire group commander pressed his headset flat against his ear and listened to something coming through the mist. Behind the two lead drones, four more FP-2s spread wide and dropped into the weeds. 50 feet over the salt flat, throttled back, the ground blurred past close enough to count the wormwood. The six airframes settled into a loose stagger, spaced so no single missile could catch two at once. Same airframe with six different jobs, each time to hit the bridge in an order somebody mapped out days ago. Nothing out here rose higher than a fence post, and that emptiness was the whole point of the plan. The one feature of this miserable terrain working in Ukraine's favor. Flat and boring counts as an advantage here. Like finding out your minivan's best feature is that nobody wants to steal it. Flying this low keeps the package alive against the big radars, guarding the Russian air defense hub at Jankoy, about 35 kilometers southeast. But it comes with a price. It crams every drone in the formation down into the one narrow lane of flyable ground the marsh allows. The Savash is a maze of shallow salt water and soft mud, and only a few firm corridors run the right way for an approach on the bridge. Any planner, either side, staring at the same map picks the same few routes. And the Russians have known where that lane runs for a very long time. Inside a command truck bristling with whip antennas, that same commander keyed his radio and started talking in a low, unhurried voice. He never once looked up at the sky above him. He didn't need to. The drones had already told him where they were. What he caught in that headset was a signal, faint, steady, coming in from 95 kilometers north. Not from the drones themselves, from the relay aircraft orbiting high above the launch team. The airborne repeater bouncing their commands forward to an FP-2 they couldn't see and couldn't reach directly. That relay had just told him exactly where to look. The FP-2 flies on a radio link, and at this range, that link only works through a relay. A manual strike drone 95 kilometers out is far past the horizon of any antenna on the ground. So Ukraine puts a repeater drone up high in the middle, orbiting where it can see both the operator and the target, passing the signal across the gap. It shrugs off the worst of Russian jamming and reaches out where no ground antenna can. That reach is exactly why Ukraine flies these relays at all. A jammer on the ground can drown out a direct link in seconds, but a repeater riding high between the trench and the target is a far harder thing to silence. So the relay is what lets a team in one trench fly a drone all the way to a bridge it will never lay eyes on. But a link that's transmitting is also a beacon anyone can find. Russian hunters listen for exactly this signal, get a bearing on it, and pinpoint whoever's sitting under it. Think of it as a flashlight waved around in a dark room. Wonderful for seeing where you're walking, and the first thing anyone hunting you will aim at. The same link that steers a drone 95 kilometers into a bridge had just painted the team for the most dangerous drone unit in the Russians' field. Those operators knew the trade exactly, so they kept their transmission short and pushed the drones deeper into the corridor. The package was committed now to the single corridor the terrain allowed. If a single radar caught them in that open lane, the whole package would burn in the air with nowhere to dive and nothing to hide behind. And here's what the launch team didn't know yet. The Russians weren't trying to keep them out of that lane. They'd spent a week making sure the drones came through. The trap wasn't on the map. It was built into the map. First contact came up out of the lane with no warning. A shoulder-fired missile, likely an Igla-type heat seeker. A tube a single soldier carries and fires off his shoulder, straight toward the lead FP-2 on a snapshot, fired by a team buried somewhere in the reeds. No radar warning, no lock tone, just a smoke trail climbing out of the grass. It's basically a bottle rocket with a grudge. Short range, no brain, but get close and hot enough that it doesn't need one. It chases heat, locking onto the hottest thing in the frame. At that hour, two warm engines against a freezing dawn. The drone's auto-evade kicked in the instant it caught the launch and hauled the airframe up into a hard climbing jink, which was precisely what the Russians had been counting on. Remember that climb the drone just made? Because it matters in about 10 seconds. A shoulder-fired infrared missile is short-legged but vicious is down in the weeds, so the escape against one is to gain altitude fast and break the shot before the seeker can settle. The missile's envelope only reaches a few kilometers straight up, so a drone with energy to spare simply climbs out of its reach and lets it burn out below. Think of it as dodging the first punch by standing straight up. It works beautifully against the jab. It also lifts your chin into the perfect position for the hook you never saw coming. That climb beat the shoulder-fired shot cleanly, but it lifted the FP2 off the deck into whatever had been sitting silent on either side of the lane. The strike drone, wings near 6 meters, had proven it could stay alive. Now came the hard part. A missile screamed off a launcher on the left flank, vertical launch, past Mach 2 before the eye could track it. The FP2 at the top of its climb came apart in the morning air. A heartbeat later, the right flank opened up, an identical shot from the opposite side of the corridor. That was a 9K331 Tor M2, Russia's mobile short-range air defense, purpose-built to hit drones, cruise missiles, and low-flying jets before they breach the perimeter. 8 missiles ready on the launcher, 4 targets engaged simultaneously without handing off to a separate radar truck. Everything it needs to find, track, and intercept rides on a single vehicle. 2 of them, one dug in on each flank. Each Tor M2 runs about $25 million, roughly $50 million in Russian air defense buried in that marsh. And in about 90 seconds, both get shut down by drones that cost a few tens of thousands of dollars apiece. $50 million of radar and missiles undone by a strike package worth less than the missiles those Tors had just fired. But the Tor has 2 weaknesses that matter a great deal this morning. First, it's command-guided. Its own radar has to stay lit and fly the missile all the way in, which means the instant it stops transmitting, every missile it has in the air goes stupid and falls away. And simpler still, for all that firepower, the Tor itself is thin-skinned. Picture your home security system. Motion sensors, cameras, the works. Genuinely hard to sneak past, right up until somebody walks up to the porch and unplugs it. 2 of these now flank the lane. The surviving drones had to jink through a crossfire over open marsh, with nowhere on the ground left to hide. The fire group commander watched the trap close just the way he'd drawn it up. Drones climbing into the crossfire, the salt flats strobing under the light of the missile motors. He had already pushed the bearing on that Ukrainian uplink up the chain. Behind him, a Rubicon signal team was turning his rough bearing into a hard grid coordinate. Rubicon is Russia's counter-drone targeting network. Signal hunters whose job is finding Ukrainian operators through their transmissions and passing coordinates to the nearest available shooter before the crew can move. The crossfire was real, and it hurt. One FP2 caught a proximity burst and tumbled into a lagoon, and the lead drone was already gone. The package scattered, shedding airframes across the marsh, and the Russians felt certain they'd sprung the trap clean. What they hadn't clocked yet was what kind of climb they'd just watched. One drone climbs because the operator panicked. The other climbs because somebody on the Ukrainian side wanted those 2 Tors to switch their radars on. The Russians had fired on everything that showed itself, exactly as drilled, and done precisely what the Ukrainians needed. Because the instant those Tor radars lit up to fire, they quietly stopped being hunters, and they became targets. 2 of the FP2 drones had been loitering wide of the lane the whole time, hanging back and waiting for one specific thing. They hadn't gone after the launchers, the trucks, or the read line. They'd been holding their fuel and their warheads for the 2 targets that hadn't shown themselves yet. That was the whole idea. Send them in with the package so they're already up, already waiting the second the Tors light up. Now they got it. 2 Tor radar dishes, lit up and rotating, broadcasting across the marsh for anyone with the right ears. The pair of FP2s rolled in. That spinning panel on top of the Tor is the one thing the FP2 was hunting. Same rule that painted the Ukrainian launch team minutes ago turned around. A transmitter is a target, and this one couldn't afford to shut up. The Tor had been forced to turn on every light in the house just to see the intruder, and every light in the house was now telling the intruder exactly which room to walk into. The command guidance trap had closed from both directions at once, while its radar stayed lit and steered missiles at the lead drones. The Tor couldn't go dark without dropping those missiles out of the sky. It was stuck on the air, and the 2 FP2s bored straight in. Both Tors took their hits in the same handful of seconds. The FP2, Firepoint's middle strike drone, fielded in numbers. 6-meter wingspan, 215 kilograms at launch, 105 kilogram warhead. Enough to gut a lightly armored launcher with margin to spare. Optional range, 200 kilometers, Los Angeles to San Diego. 2 ways to fly it: autonomous, programmed onto a fixed target, or manual over a radio link for anything that moves. And the one thing that mattered most this morning? Fly it manual through a relay, and the drone answers to whatever repeater is carrying the signal, not to one fixed antenna in one fixed trench. Costs a sliver of the $25 million target it just deleted. What it trades for price? It's not coming home, and the planners built that into the math from the start. A heavy strike warhead against a lightly armored launcher is no contest. The eastern dish shatters into spinning metal. Off the western flank, the second launcher erupts where it sits, black smoke punching up over the reeds. Back in the weeds, the surviving FP2 drops low and runs for the bridge. That week-long trap, 2 of the best short-range air defense systems Russia makes, dug in, camouflaged, waiting, is now 2 burning vehicles on a salt flat, and the hunters have just become the hunted. But the fire group commander had already won the only part that mattered to him. He'd lost 2 tours and a trap, yes, but he had something better. The Ukrainian uplink that had been transmitting for minutes, the grid was solved, and he'd already handed it off. A burning launcher can be replaced in a week. A trained drone crew can't, which is the moment the entire hunt turned around and started running the other way. In a shelter 40 kilometers back, a Rubicon signal officer had been building that grid the whole time, one bearing at a time. To him, the burning launchers were noise. The signal under them was the target, a fixed dish, transmitting, sitting on top of a crew. He passed the coordinate and went back to listening. Back at the launch site, a small fixed-wing drone cut into the sky overhead and locked onto a wide orbit. No warhead slung beneath it. No dive, no attack run. The strike drone was still 43 kilometers from the bridge. Call it 6 minutes at current speed. The Rubicon FPV was already airborne, inbound on their grid under 4 minutes. And the recon drone above them had maybe 60 seconds before it built a targeting solution accurate enough to correct an incoming warhead. Just a slow, patient circle directly above the dugout while it held its turn and watched. Watch that little fixed-wing drone circling over the dugout, slung completely clean, nothing hanging under its wings. It's not here to attack the team. It's here to look at them, and that is somehow worse. Rubicon's signal team had handed this recon drone a bearing, and its job now was to pinpoint the position and correct the strike already inbound behind it. The drone loiters, watches, and feeds a live picture back to the shooter, adjusting the aim point in real time as the target moves. It's the difference between throwing a punch with your eyes closed and throwing one with a friend standing behind the target telling you exactly where to aim. After the recon drone fixes the position, an FPV drone or a Lancet does the rest. The crew in that dugout couldn't see the full size of the thing that had found them. Rubicon's hunters had reportedly wiped out 70% of the Ukrainian brigade's drone crews in a single week. The spotter finds you, points, and keeps pointing while the shooter walks the punch in. So take the spotter's eyes away and the shooter is throwing blind. Ukraine's own dish had led that spotter straight overhead, and the team had seconds to do something about the cameras circling above their heads. A heartbeat later, an FPV interceptor went straight up at the orbiting recon drone. A ram, not a shot. If that camera got a clean fix before they knocked it down, the correction would reach the inbound FPV, and the next thing through the dugout roof would be a warhead. No warhead on the interceptor, no clever sensor, just a fast little drone aimed bodily at the enemy machine, like chucking a rock at a bird, except the rock is doing 80 miles an hour and steered through a jittering first-person camera with no second chances if the pilot flinched. The first pass missed clean. A second interceptor went up right behind it. This one connected. It sent the Russian recon drone spinning into the reeds and took the spotter's eyes with it. Blinding the spotter didn't wipe the grid Rubicon already had, but it wrecked the aim of whatever came next. The inbound Rubicon FPV now had a stale position and no live correction feeding it. Degraded or not, it still meant a warhead pointed at the dugout, even if it landed a few meters off. And worse, the strike drone still wasn't anywhere near the bridge. It was on manual control now, which meant the team couldn't stop transmitting, couldn't run, and couldn't go dark while they flew it. The one thing keeping their drone in the air was the exact thing getting them hunted. 8 kilometers from the bridge, the surviving FP2 was on manual control. Ukraine flew it by hand, the pilot's fingers tight on the sticks, sweat sliding down his back in the closed dugout, threading the deck through the low mist still hanging over the Savage. And the run was going wrong, manual flying at this distance, through mist this thick, with the aim point drifting a meter at a time. On their current line, they were going to miss the bridge by enough to leave it standing. And they couldn't fix it the easy way, because the easy way meant staying exactly where they were. The FPV link demanded a live transmitting terminal, and the Rubicon FPV was inbound on their grid right now. Every second on the stick correcting the run was another second sitting still on a position the enemy had already solved. Hold the link and hit the bridge, and very likely get hit in the same minute. Or cut the link, survive, and watch the mission fall apart 8 kilometers short of a bridge nobody else was in position to finish. Hold and maybe lose everything. Or cut and certainly fail. There was no clean answer in that dugout. So instead of choosing, they did something the fire group commander had spent the whole morning making impossible. Team A's long, exposed, hunted run wasn't a crew improvising an escape. It was the plan. They were always going to fly the dangerous middle and hand the drone off before the bill came due. 50 kilometers away, a second relay drone had been holding a quiet orbit since before the launch, high enough to see that same patch of sky over the bridge. On the call, Team B pushed their relay into the link and picked up the drone's feed. The FP2 flew on without a single stutter. In that same instant, Team A's relay peeled out of its orbit and ran for home, and the launch team's antenna folded flat against the truck bed. 2 signal chains, 50 kilometers apart, one waking up, one going dark, and the drone never felt the seam. Take a look at what those 2 relays are doing. The cold one easing into the link while the first slips away west. That single swap is the whole reason any of these operators are still breathing. The drone answers to whatever relay is carrying its signal, not to one ground station bolted to one trench. So any Ukrainian crew with a repeater in the right piece of sky can pick up the feed and take over the flying, without the drone ever knowing it changed hands. A drone chained to a single ground antenna falls out of the sky the moment that antenna goes quiet. A drone flown through a relay chain just needs a new relay, and it doesn't care which crew is holding the controller. Control just hops from one team to another, a town away. Ukraine had drilled the handoff cold. A quick check that the inbound crew is friendly and flying the right airframe, and the link passes clean from one relay to the next. Picture 2 people sharing one video game. One controller passed between them mid-level, except the second player is in another town entirely. And the first player's whole job, the instant the handoff lands, is to get up and run. Team A was dark now and already bugging out. Team B sat cold, unhunted, holding a drone 8 kilometers from that bridge. The Rubicon FPV arrived over Ukraine's dugout a moment later and found the place emptying out. The grid that was supposed to hold a transmitting crew held a folded antenna and a truck already rolling. The hunter had arrived at a place that wasn't there anymore. Antenna down, crew gone into the mist. Ukraine's last defensive shot came up against the incoming FPV anyway, a single chance against a closing target through the haze. The Russian drone bored in close enough that the crew felt the air punch through the floorboards. But close enough to feel isn't the same as close enough to matter. Team B flew the final 8 kilometers clean, antenna quiet, and no one in the world looking for them. No one was triangulating their transmissions, and no FPV was inbound on their position. They walked the FP2 out of the thinning mist and lined it up on the open span of the bridge deck. Then they put its full warhead into the deck. A hole better than a meter across opened on the Charnhar deck. The 2 FP2 strikers followed 30 seconds behind the lead drone and cratered the roadway in a second and third place along its span. 3 holes in the deck isn't a dramatic fireball, but it's exactly what closes a bridge. A truck can't drive across a meter-wide gap, and the column behind it can't drive around one on a 2-lane span over open water. The artery feeding Russia's entire grouping on the Kherson-Crimea axis had just been closed. And everything those units ran on, fuel, shells, parts, fresh troops, now had to find another way across a strait that no longer had a bridge.